Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1977. We're going to be taking a look at Johnny Rivers and he's going to be playing through Swayin to the music, Slow Dancing. So let's get Johnny up on screen and see how he gets on.
It's late at night and we're all alone. Just the music on the radio. No one's coming, no one's gonna telephone. Just me and you and the lights down low. And we're slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. No one else in the whole wide world. Just you, girl. Hey, we just flow together when the lights are low. Shadows dancing all across the wall. Music's playing so soft and slow. And the rest of the world's so far away and small. But we're slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. No one else in the whole wide world. Hold me. Hold me. Hey, never let me go. As we dance together in the dark, there's so much love in this heart of mine.
I'm just going to jump in here because Johnny Rivers has such a smooth vocal style. It's so easy to listen to his voice, and this is a great rendition of the track because we've got everything on stage. The way that the saxophone comes in and is so tastefully played but also tastefully mixed, and you pretty much always got that from the Midnight Special show. But getting into those instruments, because you've got an 8-piece here that I can count, or at least that I can hear, and that makes such a difference having all of the elements that you would have on the record being on stage. So it means everything that you're listening out for can be reproduced, and when you're working with top musicians and also top vocalists, it means that you're going to get a fantastic rendition live of the recorded track, and top musicians throughout the band here. Like I mentioned, saxophone and the keys in there as well. We've got 3 guitars in all if we're counting Johnny's guitar as well. We've got 2 backing vocalists, obviously you've got drums and bass. So there's a lot going off here, but because it is so well arranged and the players are top professionals, it means they just come in for their parts and then let the track breathe when the other instruments are playing, for example in the verse, and the saxophone takes a back step and then comes in for the choruses. Tiny details, but they make all the difference to the dynamics of a live performance when you've got so many musicians on stage. It's all about letting the track breathe, and as you would have noticed during this ballad, there's no guitar solo. All of the solo work is taken over by the saxophone, and Again, a great mix because the saxophone isn't overpowering, which is sometimes the case because of the nature of the instrument, and especially on a ballad, so it's really well mixed in there. And another thing to listen out for, even though it's really subtle, but it's great, is the way that the piano is mixed in just underneath that saxophone for the lead sections. And just to address the track name, because it's billed here as Slow Dancing, but they changed, or at least issued, the name of the track as Swayin to the music and then Slow Dancing in brackets, because I think there was another song around at the time that had Slow Dancing in the title and they didn't want to get it confused. And just a bit of trivia about this track, it was originally written by Jack Temchin, and this was Johnny's last top 10 hit, and he released it in 1977, the same year that this video is from. It's also his most downloaded track on iTunes, and this show, Johnny recorded the title track to the Midnight Special. And Johnny's one of those guys that started playing guitar at a young age. His dad and his uncle showed him how to play when he was 8 years old, and when he was 16 and 17, around that time, on a trip to New York, he bumped into Alan Freed, who was a DJ at the time, and Alan suggested that Johnny should change his name from Johnny Ramistella to Johnny Rivers, and Johnny did that, and he also secured some recording contracts for Johnny at a local label, and also Johnny released 3 records at that time. Unfortunately, they didn't do really well, but let's bear in mind he was only 16 and 17 at this time. So in 1959, Johnny was playing throughout the American South, and at this time he bumped into Audrey Williams, which at the time was the wife of Hank Williams, and she suggested to Johnny that he should move to Nashville, which he did, and he found work as a songwriter and also a demo singer. And it's interesting because at this point, Johnny thought that he'd never make it as a singer, so he really decided to concentrate on his songwriting. And the year previously, Johnny had met James Burton, and if you don't know who James Burton is, check out the video that I've done on him to see his playing. But he was playing at the time with Ricky Nelson, and he suggested to Ricky later on that he record one of the tracks that Johnny had recorded called I'll Make Believe. In 1961, Johnny then met Ricky Nelson and found work as a songwriter again, but also as a studio musician. And it wasn't until 1963 that Johnny got his break. He was filling in for a jazz band at a venue in Hollywood, and he went down really well, became really popular, and started to draw really big crowds. So with this popularity, in 1964, Johnny managed to secure a contract to open up at Whiskey A Go Go on Sunset Strip, and that contract was for a year. Unfortunately, just 3 days after the place opened, the Beatles came over from the UK with their track I Want to Hold Your Hand, and the subsequent British invasion knocked pretty much all of the US bands out of the top spots in the US charts. But they released a live album of Johnny live at Whiskey A Go Go, and it got to number 12, so it just showed the quality of the live sound and Johnny's popularity at the time. Johnny said that his most requested track at the time was Memphis, and that was originally a Chuck Berry track, but that original by Chuck Berry didn't do particularly well. Johnny far outsold it. He got to number 2 with his cover of that track. And it's interesting because a friend of Elvis, Alan Fortas, said that Elvis showed this to Johnny with the arrangement, and he said that he was thinking about doing it and releasing it, but then Johnny took that same arrangement that he'd heard and released it himself. So there's a little bit of controversy around that, and apparently Elvis put Johnny on his list. I won't mention what it was called, but it was a hits list, but with another letter in front of hit. And those were people that Elvis wouldn't have worked with in the future and people that he didn't really like in the industry. Unfortunately, apparently, Johnny was added to that list. And in 1963, Johnny was approached to record a title theme, a title song for a TV show, and it was called originally Danger Man, but then when it was released in the USA, it was called Secret Agent. And the song that Johnny finally made, initially he didn't want to do it, but then he did. The song was called Secret Agent Man, and that was so popular as a theme, they then recorded it and released it, and that got to number 3 in the US charts. So in 1966, bear in mind, Johnny's still only 24 at this point, he releases his own track called Poor Side of Town, and that went to number 1. That was his most successful track. That was co-written with Lou Adler, and it just goes to show that he's got that writing ability. He also started up a record label of his own called Soul City Records, and he signed another band called The Fifth Dimension, and they got 2 number 1s for that record label. And Johnny has also been cited as the guy who gave Jimmy Webb his break in the industry, the songwriter, because The Fifth Dimension, who were signed to Johnny's label, they released Up, Up and Away, which was a Jimmy Webb track. And also there was another track, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, which was covered by Glenn Campbell, and he had a massive hit with that. And check out Glenn Campbell on this channel if you get a chance as well. And in the late 60s and the early 70s, Johnny released a string of covers that did really well as well. But let's get back to this video and get back into the performance.
You whisper to me, hold me tight. You're the one I thought I'd never find. Now we're slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. No one else in the whole wide world. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. No one else in the whole wide world. Whole wide world. Slow dancing.
And there we have it. That vocal is just smooth as silk, and the way that Johnny delivers it. The other thing is that Johnny's not straining here, he's not belting, he's just getting that tone that really does communicate through his voice and will connect with an audience. And it's so rare to have a performer and a singer who has that ability to just sing so easily but still connect. And that's what happened with the great singer-songwriters back, especially in the 60s and the 70s. There were so many of them that had that ability and had the ability to play and sing at the same time. They were just all-round musicians and artists. And we did have a small guitar solo in there. It wasn't extended by any means, but just to fill that gap. And that's what this track has in spades, is tasteful playing and tasteful solos and little hooks that just slot into their very specific sections, and at no point is any instrument overpowering you within this track. So it means that you really get to focus on Johnny's lead vocal, because it's such a great lead vocal to listen to. And as an artist, Johnny Rivers is one of those that has just sold millions and millions of records. It's well over 30 million. And when I'm talking about records and the fact that he had his own record label, he's one of the very few artists that owns the copyrights to his songs by name. And that is a rare thing in the music industry, to have your song and then just attributed to Johnny Rivers or Mariah Carey. Another one's Paul Simon and also Neil Diamond. They have the rights to their music by name. Often what you'll find is that when you're watching a video on YouTube and at the bottom it says music in this video, it'll be listed as owned by a record label or a publishing company that the management company might have set up, or that the record label uses. It's very rare to just have the name of the artist behind a particular piece or composition. So having control of that, Johnny is obviously very very switched on in terms of the music industry, and this was all spearheaded by the Bee Gees because they had a $200 million lawsuit against their record label RSO Records, and they were successful in that case. So it really made every other band and artist aware of the copyright situation, and it showed how important it was to keep control of the copyrights in regard to your own music, the stuff that you're writing, and also for other bands and artists. It showed them not to sign a contract with a record label that meant they now had the rights to all of your intellectual property, all of the music that you've written yourself. So that is a real turning point in the industry. But what a great live performance this is, and Johnny was one of those artists that had that prolonged success from 1964 through to 1977, and was a great songwriter as well, could play and sing, but also did a lot of covers of other people's tracks and made them his own. And that was the great thing about Johnny and other top artists, is that they could take somebody else's song but make it personal to them and deliver it in such a way that it really did sound like their own track. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!